The first thing anyone would notice was the mud. Thick streaks clinging to the sleeves, splattered across the knees, smudged against the cheeks of a young woman who looked like life had tried its best to swallow her whole that morning. Yet she still stood there, trembling, clutching her small bag to her chest, and breathing fast as if every inhale was a fight. And it wasn't the mud that made the moment unforgettable, it was the expression in her eyes, an expression that blended fear, exhaustion, and a quiet determination that refused to die. Her name was Maren Vale, and this was the last place she expected to be, standing outside a sunny cafe for a blind date, covered in mud from head to toe. But if you believe in kindness, second chances, and moments that can change a life, please take a second to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindly Tube. Your support helps us spread more heart-touching stories. Maren hadn't planned to look like this. In fact, she had spent the entire previous night preparing for this date. Not because she thought it would change her life, but because it had been years since she had allowed herself to hope for anything. She came from a place where hope wasn't a choice, it was a luxury. Her life since childhood had been full of responsibilities, taking care of a sick father until his last days, working at a small mechanic shed to support herself, and constantly battling the judgment of people who believed her dreams belonged only to those who looked clean, polished, and elegant. She wasn't polished. But she tried. The day had started with sunlight pouring through her broken window, almost as if it were cheering her on. Maren wore her one nice dress, a simple blue cotton one, and borrowed shoes from her neighbor, an elderly woman who always said Maren deserved a miracle. But just as she left home, determined to make the best impression she could, a stray dog at the bus station had gotten tangled in a wire. Without thinking, Maren had rushed to free it. The dog was terrified, drenched from the morning dew, and when it panicked, it dragged Maren into a muddy slope. By the time she freed it, she looked like someone who had rolled down a hill, because she had. And when she finally made it to the cafe, everyone stared. Inside the cafe sat Rowan Hale, a 34-year-old single father with gentle features and tired eyes that carried the weight of both love and survival. His young daughter, Avery, had been his whole world since the day her mother left when she was just 3. Rowan had promised himself that someday, when he healed enough to offer someone kindness without breaking apart, he would try again. That day had arrived reluctantly, and he agreed to meet someone his colleague had insisted he should get to know. He expected awkwardness, formal smiles, maybe small talk. He did not expect a girl covered in mud walking toward him with trembling hands and courage written all over her face. Maren almost turned around. Every step felt like an apology, every glance from strangers reminded her of what she already knew: she didn't fit in places like this. But she had shown up, and something deep inside her said she owed herself at least that much. Rowan watched her entering the cafe with careful eyes, and instead of disgust or surprise, something else flickered across his face. Concern. The sunlight from the wide glass windows washed over her muddy dress, revealing every detail she wished she could hide. Maren felt like the earth might swallow her whole. But underneath the mud, Rowan noticed something the others didn't: the way her hands trembled, not from embarrassment, but from exhaustion. The way she took every step slowly, as if trying not to collapse. The way she looked around, not with shame, but with hope. That was what struck him. Maren stood there, hoping the floor would swallow her. She was ready for him to stand up, grab his coat, and walk out the door. She had lived through enough disappointments to recognize the pattern. But what she didn't expect was the warmth in Rowan's expression, something soft that felt like the first real kindness she had been offered in a long time. He gestured gently for her to come closer, and although no words were exchanged, the gesture alone made her chest tighten. She took a deep breath and stepped forward. Maren's heart raced. The cafe's daytime buzz, the clinking cups, the soft music in the background, it all blended into a blur as she sat in front of him. She felt like she owed him an explanation, an apology, a justification. But what she didn't realize was that Rowan didn't see the mud. He saw a human being, tired, fragile, but astonishingly brave. Rowan had lived long enough to know that life often painted its strongest people with the roughest colors. Raising Avery alone had taught him that beauty was not in perfection but in survival. And the woman sitting in front of him looked like she had survived storms no one else had seen. Instead of judging her appearance, he wondered about her story, about the path that had led her to show up despite everything. Maren's heart ached from the morning's chaos and the weight of her past. The memories of her father's illness, the nights spent working late at the mechanic shed, the mornings when she didn't know if she would eat until noon. Life had aged her spirit more than her years. She had never been the girl with flawless skin, glossy hair, or expensive clothes. She was the girl who patched up her own shoes, applied borrowed mascara, and tried her best to look presentable in a world that demanded perfection. But today, even her best effort had been swallowed by a muddy hill and a frightened stray dog. Rowan watched her with quiet thoughtfulness, and though her exterior was a messy collage of earth and stains, the sunlight revealed something else, a kind of honest vulnerability he wasn't used to seeing in people. He wasn't looking for elegance or beauty. He was looking for sincerity. And hers was undeniable. As the moments passed, something inside Maren eased. She felt something unfamiliar, safety. The way Rowan's expression softened, the way he leaned slightly forward as if trying to understand her silently, made her realize something important. Not everyone judged worth by appearance, but life wasn't ready to make things easy. Just as Maren felt a fragile sense of calm, a pair of women from a nearby table began snickering in her direction. Maren heard a remark about people who don't belong and felt the old familiar sting of shame spreading through her chest. For a moment, the air in her lungs felt heavy. She had lived through humiliation before, but today it felt sharper because she had dared to hope. She lowered her eyes, wishing she could disappear. Rowan noticed something fierce lit in him, a protectiveness he hadn't felt in years. He had spent so long teaching his daughter that kindness mattered more than anything, and now he watched a woman who had clearly fought through the morning, the world, and maybe her entire life, being humiliated for simply trying. His heart clenched in a way he didn't expect, but Maren didn't ask for help. She just sat there quietly, steadying her breathing, trying to convince herself she didn't care. Yet Rowan sensed the truth. He gently shifted his attention fully to her, determined to make her feel seen, respected, and valued. In that moment, something unspoken formed between them, a connection built not on perfection, but on humanity. The waiter hesitated before approaching, glancing at the mud on Maren's clothes, clearly unsure whether to serve her. Maren bowed her head, expecting the worst. But Rowan gave the waiter a look that left no room for hesitation. The young man straightened, took their orders, and walked away quickly. Maren felt her heart swell with a strange mixture of relief and disbelief. No one had stood up for her in a long time. Rowan leaned back in his seat, studying the way sunlight hit Maren's face. Beneath the layers of mud and exhaustion, he noticed faint freckles across her nose, the softness in her eyes, and a quiet resilience that seemed carved into her bones. Maren felt the weight of his gaze but didn't shrink from it. Instead, something inside her slowly began to thaw. She wanted to tell him about her father, about the years she spent caring for him, about how she picked up repair skills just to keep their home running. She wanted to tell him about the neighbors who gossiped about her, about the nights she ate little so she could save enough for medicine. She wanted to say 100 truths she had kept hidden. But every story felt too heavy, too large to place on a first meeting table. Instead, she let silence speak, and Rowan understood. Sometimes silence carried more truth than words ever could. Avery, Rowan's daughter, wasn't with him that day, but she changed everything without being present. Rowan found himself imagining how Maren would treat his daughter, whether her heart had space for kindness. Something told him yes. He could almost picture Maren kneeling beside Avery, talking gently, repairing a broken toy, or offering comfort the way only someone who had experienced loss could. As they continued to sit together, the morning sunlight warmed the cafe. Maren's tension slowly eased, and a spark of warmth began to flicker within her chest. Rowan found himself smiling, not because of her appearance, but because of her strength. The rest of the date moved like the soft glide of daylight across a quiet morning. No drama, no noise, just two people sharing space in a world that had been unkind to both of them. And in that gentle unfolding of moments, Maren felt the strangest, most beautiful shift inside her. She felt seen. Near the end, something emotional formed between them, a sense that this meeting wasn't an accident. Maren realized she wasn't being tolerated. She was being valued. And for Rowan, the muddy girl who walked by,